Hi there, this is Donna Kozik. I'm the founder of MyBigBusinessCard.com and creator and leader of the original Write a Book in a Weekend program. In fact, I love turning people into authors. These are some of the graduates of my Write a Book in a Weekend program, my mastermind, and my private coaching students. And people who have written and published their own book that they can hold in their hands. And even though they use some of my techniques, each one is different, just like those individuals. And I just love the look of pride and the smiles that they have on their faces. I have a sister program called Done For You Publishing, where we do the interior formatting, cover design, and upload to Amazon for our clients so they don't have to mess around with those technical issues. But today I'm talking about 7 steps to setting up a webinar. This is a question I get a lot. I do a lot of webinars, and I was thinking, well, what do I do? And I thought I'd share it with you. By the way, that was the end of all of the fancy graphics with what I'm sharing. Pretty much is just words on screen from now on. So my first step in setting up a webinar is to actually schedule it. Put it in the calendar. You know how it is when you think, oh, I should do something, and then you never get it done. And one of the reasons I get things done is I actually put it in the calendar. That's my very first step, is to schedule it, put it in the calendar, and then hold myself accountable to it. Also, I know that ready or not, it's going to have to happen on that day, because soon after I schedule it, I started announcing it and sharing it with people on my social media profiles and all that, so they know it's there. So that helps hold me accountable that I'm going to do a webinar. Kind of going along with scheduling it too is, of course, naming your webinar. I like a formula, something like 7 steps to setting up a webinar, something like that. People love webinars that will actually show them how to do something. And when you put a number to it in your title, just like a book title, that really works well for a webinar. So you don't have to overthink that. Just say what you're going to be doing during your webinar. Step number 2 is to outline your presentation. And the best way I find to do that is through a PowerPoint, just like this. When I thought about doing this brief webinar, first thing I did is went and opened up PowerPoint and started listing my steps of what I would be sharing. So that is a very good way to get yourself comfortable with the message that you're going to share. I do encourage you to keep it super simple and just outline your different points that you're going to share, put a little introduction onto it, maybe have a little conclusion to it, and it's done. And one of the reasons why this is your next step is so you can become comfortable and familiar with what you are presenting, because your next step is to create an opt-in page for your webinar. So on the opt-in page, you're going to share the title of your webinar, you're going to share the date and the time of your webinar, and you're going to share some of the things that people will learn in the webinar, a little bullet point list of 3, 4, 5 things that you'll be talking about, and you'll know what that is because in step 2, you outlined your presentation. So you just take those ideas of what you'll be sharing and you put it on an opt-in page. An opt-in page, in case you're not familiar, is a way for people to register and to raise their hand and say, yes, I want to attend this webinar, please give me more information about it. And then you're able, of course, then to remind them through step 4, your email sequence. This is what comes after people opt in for a webinar. First, you send them an email saying, welcome, congratulations, you are in for my webinar where I'm going to share with you so many steps to doing whatever, and I can't wait to share this information with you. Just a reminder, here for your calendar is the date and the time of the webinar. That's usually the first email that you send. Then you can send a few other ones after that. If you have a few days before your webinar takes place, you can send what I call a quick question email, where you ask the person who is registered, what is your biggest challenge around this subject? Or what is your biggest question around this subject? And then you get some feedback from your viewers of the webinar, and you'll know a little bit more about what to address during your webinar, so you can go fill out that outline of your presentation and address some of the questions that you're receiving from the people who are registering for it. So an email sequence, again, it starts with a welcome email. a day or so later, you can have a quick question email. The day of your webinar, I actually send out 3 emails that day, sometimes 4. It starts out first thing in the morning. Don't forget, we have a webinar later on today. And then an hour before the webinar, hey, top of the hour, I'm going to be talking about this. Make sure you join me. Then maybe a few minutes before the webinar, all right, I'm calling in right now. Go ahead and join me here through this link. And then sometimes at the very start of the webinar, say it's at 4 o'clock Pacific time, at 4 o'clock Pacific time, I send out an email that says, are you on the line? Are you there? And that also has a link to it, and people can join me on that webinar. It's really key for almost every webinar to get attendance, right? You want people there, and the best way to get people there is to remind them what they opted in for. They raised their hand. They said, I want more information. Tell me how I can attend this webinar. So I feel that they give me permission to let them know what's happening and to remind them to attend, especially with the number of emails that we get and the number of distractions that we have online. I find that 3 or 4 emails going out that day is actually a good thing, and many people even thank me for sending so many emails. So you do want to have the actual email sequence to drive people to your webinar. After that, you conduct the webinar. So on that day, you're all ready to go, and you actually have your webinar. It could be anywhere from 30 minutes to 90 minutes or longer, just depending on what you're covering. If this is the first time you're doing a webinar, suggest something around 45 minutes or so. Cover your information of what you're going to share, answer some questions. And if you're more seasoned at doing webinars, you can sometimes go a little bit longer than an hour, maybe even 90 minutes. The people who are interested will stay there. I do find that there's a natural tendency for people to drop off webinars after 60 minutes, after 1 hour. But the people who are into it, they will stay around. I was on one the other day. I was a guest on a webinar, and it was 2.5 hours long, and I came in around minute 90, and there were something like 18 people there, and those 18 people stayed till the very end. So if you have compelling content and people are interested, they will stick around. Then step 6 is to send out the replay and what I call a follow-up sequence. So the replay is up to you whether or not you actually send one out. I usually send one out, but I don't tell people I'm going to send it out. That way I drive them to actually attend live. Sometimes though, I tell people, you're not sure you're going to be able to make it, go ahead and register anyway. I will send out a replay. I do that in those cases because it's more important for me to have the person actually raise their hand and say, tell me more about this information, even if they're not going to be able to attend the webinar live. So I send out the replay usually the night of the webinar, and then I follow up in the following days. Again, here's the replay in case you missed it. Here's something I talked about on the webinar. Here's an offer I made or an invitation I made on the webinar. Here's a little bit more about that invitation. So I have a follow-up email sequence, again, driving people to make a decision to join me in a program or to join my Facebook page or whatever it might be. And then finally, rinse and repeat. This just becomes second nature the more you do it. So I find that teaching is one of the best ways to market your business, to promote yourself, whether you're promoting yourself as a speaker or as an author, as an entrepreneur, whatever you're up to. When you're conducting webinars, that is the best way to get your message out, to be perceived and seen as an authority, and also for a way for you to practice your message and for more people to hear it. And I really just find it such a valuable way. And as you have seen, even if people don't show up, by raising their hand and saying, send me the information, that is a way for you to make contact with people. That quick question that I mentioned that I send out after people register for a webinar, sometimes I personally answer them, and that makes a connection with people. So there are any number of ways that you can make personal connections with people by doing webinars. I'm a big believer. I've done thousands of them, and I think you should too. I'm going to finish up with some recommended resources for you. I've been using Instant Teleseminar for pretty much close to 15 years, I want to say. and it is my go-to resource for doing webinars. And they've really come a long way in some of the bells and whistles that they have with their program. So Instant Teleseminar is my #1 way. Of course, I also love Zoom. I love Zoom for my masterminds that I have, so we can all see each other and share the screen. And also Zoom is becoming more used by a lot of people that they have the software. There's not a big technical leap for them to make it out. It's not quite as easy as Instant Teleseminar, but it's close on its heels. Also, of course, Facebook Live is becoming a great way to do webinars and to do speaking. So you can do that on your personal page, on your business page, or in groups that you administer on Facebook. For getting opt-ins, Lead Pages is my go-to resource. It is so easy. They have so many templates, and just very easy to make up opt-in pages, and also a way to do it that I don't have to pay somebody like my VA to go and do any HTML coding or design or anything like that. I actually use Lead Pages not only to make a nice looking registration page, but to help me think through the process of what I want to share on the webinar sometimes. So Lead Pages is my go-to resource for getting opt-ins. And then also my email system, I use Infusionsoft. I've been in business and using Infusionsoft for a long time. If you're just getting started though, Aweber and MailChimp are 2 recommended resources that I have. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this training, my 7 steps to setting up a webinar. Again, my name is Donna Kozik. I'm the founder of MyBigBusinessCard.com. You can pick up a free book planner for yourself at freebookplanner.com, and I will see you in the bookstore.